Thanks, Jeff. So welcome to Ideas Adores. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We spoke on the phone a couple times, and we're sitting in a cafe in San Francisco and having a conversation, and I wanted to kind of even just pick up where we left off to some degree. So why don't you first start by just telling us a little bit about what is the Renewal Workshop?
Yeah, so the Renewal Workshop is a company that is trying to enable a circular economy for the apparel industry. So what we do is we partner with brands and retailers to source all of their unsellable goods and their unsellable returns and excess inventory. And we take that product, which normally they send to landfill. Right. And we built a factory in Oregon where we are able to process that, sort it, identify that product that actually could be what we call renewed, and then put it through a cleaning process and repair process so that it can actually be sold again to the customer.
So what's you said it's unsellable. Define that. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the apparel industry is a linear industry. We take, make, use, and dump. And the brands and retailers really want product to go in one direction, and that is out their door. But the reality is that it comes back to them in all sorts of ways. So product could come back because they have a warranty program, and a lot of times those brands will replace rather than repair in the case of warranty, and then they'll be left with a garment with something wrong with it. Right. You'll get product that gets dirty in the retail store. It can't be sold as first quality. Makeup stains get on product when people try them on. Can't be sold as first quality. Customers buy product, use it, and return it all the time, like constantly.
Is there some way you can quantify what that,
It's in the millions and millions of products per year across the country. It's for most medium, small-sized brands, and it's in the hundreds of millions of products for some of the larger, big brands. So we're talking about a ton of products that are missing buttons, got wet in shipping, have makeup stains, got kicked on the floor in the retail store, that all end up back at the warehouse. Right. And these are products that the brand ends up writing off, and they have no system to do anything with these products. So what currently happens is they basically shred it and landfill it. But what was so heartbreaking is like a product missing a button, a shirt missing a button is not landfill. Right. A shirt that got dirty is not landfill. But there's really no systems in place for the brand to figure out what to do next. And they don't manufacture their own clothes. We don't really make anything anymore in America. So they don't have the systems in place to be able to fix those themselves.
Right. So you had some background prior to starting Renewal Workshop and I should say your co-founder Renewal Workshop.
That's right.
Why don't you share a little bit of that background, because you're talking not just kind of theoretical here, but from a lot of experience in the retail and brand industry already.
Yeah, my background started, I actually have a mechanical engineering degree, so it's a circuitous route to wherever it is you end up in your career. My first job out of university was with General Motors in their alternative fuels department. So now I'm doing
preparation for this role.
Yeah, exactly. But I've actually always been really fascinated and interested in manufacturing, and I love seeing how stuff gets made. So I started my career in product development after GM, and I worked on everything from forks to furniture. Spent a lot of time in Asia in factories getting all kinds of products that we use every day made, and it was really mind-blowing. I was in a lot of terrible factories that were pretty environmentally destructive and socially exploitative, and it was something that really got me to start thinking about like why we don't have to be killing people on the other side of the world to make our potato peelers. And so I went and did my MBA at Berkeley with the intention of figuring out sustainability in manufacturing and how do we bring those things together. In that process, I co-founded the apparel brand Packed Apparel, and that started out as an underwear and socks brand that was all intended to be organic and transparently manufactured. It grew into a full basics brand, and we were one of the first to launch fair trade apparel to the U.S. market. The brand is sold in Whole Foods nationwide, Amazon, Nordstrom, Zappos, and has its own direct-to-consumer site. And so that's kind of where I really learned about apparel and sustainability and all of the issues associated with it. It is an incredibly complicated supply chain, and one that is ripe for environmental and social exploitation, and just there's a ton of work to be done in it. And we've spent a lot of time in the supply chain part of it trying to fix that, trying to apply regulation, trying to do social audits to make sure that workers are being paid. The reality that we would see is so much effort going into making product on the other side of the world, and then here in America, when we were done with it, it would just go to trash.
Right.
So like 41 million tons of apparel goes to landfill in the US. That's about 86 pounds per person per year. There's really not great mechanisms for us to donate product. Goodwill only keeps about 18 to 20% of what we give them. The rest of it is often landfilled. A lot of the stuff that ends up getting sold to jobbers and stuff goes overseas to Africa. Africa is now banning the import of Western used textiles because we've flooded their markets. And so we really have this challenge on our hand. Textiles are the fastest growing component of municipal landfill. And I think I read a statistic recently saying that by 2020, New York City, it's going to cost New York City taxpayers $100 million a year to deal with the collection and disposal of textiles and apparel just there alone.
That's an amazing number.
And so you're thinking like, right now the brands make so much stuff every single year, and then the municipalities and taxpayers are on the hook for it when we have to figure out what to do with it when we're done with it.
Right.
And so all of that kind of led to the development of this business model that is the Renewal Workshop.
So, there's almost like a supply and demand side to this. And I think when we talked about the documentary, The True Cost, and I know some of our students have seen that. What part of that is getting consumers willing, in part, to not pay or to not only pay $7 for a pair of shorts and invest in something a lot more? How does that get played into this equation that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really tough to get consumers off of price. I think that that's something that they're just the number one deciding factor for most consumers is price. I think ultimately, someone told me there's the difference between a $20 item and a $2 item. The $2 item is ultimately more expensive in the long run because you have to keep buying the $2 item over and over again.
Right.
So there is something to really be said about quality. What we do is we work with brands that are already making product at a high enough quality that it can go out into the world and it can come back to them, and then we can put it through our renewal process and it can then be enjoyed again by another consumer. We like to price the renewed apparel at about 30% off the original retail price. So it offers consumers an ability to get into a brand and purchase a brand without maybe having to pay full price, but without the brand having to discount. And I think that all brands are trying to get away from this 50% off, sale, constantly on sale.
Right.
And so this is that way that brands can do it, and I think that we really need to think about new, innovative ways of doing models for apparel. And when we like to describe the Renewal Workshop and what it does from a category standpoint, we think of the car industry and the whole used car industry, right? And so, you can buy a 3 Series or a used 5 Series. And there's different customers for those cars. So this is about growing the pie for a brand.
Right.
And then you think about how we used to sell used cars. It was like Joe's used car lot down the street, and you'd be selling a Toyota. They may be driving off the lot with from Joe's Used Cars, but they're having a Toyota experience, right?
Right.
And so Toyota smartly was like, wait a minute, we need to actually own that customer and that experience. And so they created this certified pre-owned sort of status and this like quality, and now that's how we buy our used cars, from the brand themselves. 50% of sales come from new and 50% come from used now. Right. And so that's a market that's been able to mature around used and pre-owned product, and also this idea of certifying that quality for the customer, but it's still cheaper than a brand new car. And so we're taking a really similar model to the apparel industry. Right, we're partnering with the brands are involved, it's co-branded with the brand, we certify the quality to match the original quality of the brand, we're not redesigning the product, and so the customer can feel that they really can trust the quality, and they're able to buy it for a lower price.
So how have brands, I mean, I know you've got several brands that you're already working with, and I know you're working with or trying to work with others, and we'll adding more. How, when you approach them, particularly somebody brand new, what's their reaction to this whole concept?
Yeah, it's interesting that, you know, in the apparel industry right now, there's a real, especially in the big sort of mainstream brands, there is a real awareness of sustainability, and a lot of these brands are a part of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition.
Okay.
And that is a big industry-wide coalition, and the industry has come together really for the first time to say, hey, when it comes to sustainability, we should stop benchmarking ourselves all differently and defining it differently within each brand, right? We should come up with like a common set of metrics across the entire industry, and then use that as the way to evaluate how we judge what sustainability is and move the industry together forward,
So
right?
define what means a sustainable brand?
Yeah, you know, water usage, carbon
Okay.
impacts, like all of those things. They're using these overseas supply chains, what materials they're using, the impacts that those have. So there's a huge amount of effort gone into that by all of the biggest brands in the world, and a lot of the smaller, medium-sized brands too. And part of that sustainability evaluation is an end-of-use question.
Okay.
And pretty much every brand gets 0 because they have no
Right.
end-of-use strategy.
Right.
And what we're able to do at the Renewal Workshop was to build our business model around answering the questions that are required for reporting by brands around that end of use. And so this is an important reporting part of their business, and we're able to take them a solution that they otherwise basically would never develop themselves. So I think that that's an important piece for us as we're talking to a lot of really large brands. Like, we can solve this problem for you. We can address these like serious strategic sustainability issues. And then I think a lot of other brands that when we approach them, especially smaller and medium-sized brands, it's an opportunity to sell a new and different product without having to make more product, without having to invest in all of this, more inventory. It's a new story to tell customers. They're
Right.
always looking for stories and ways to connect with customers, and it can be something unique to them.
Sure.
And that's what every brand is trying to figure out now, is like, what is that unique thing that we do that allows us to engage with customers on a relationship level?
Sure.
And I think part of that is what we're able to offer them and sell them.
Are they, and there's always these kind of thoughts, well, the only reason that some companies have a consumer or a corporate social responsibility page on their website is that they're just pandering to people who care about that. What's your gut feeling about the brands that you are working with? And then the industry as a whole, is this something that's a nice little trick, something nice in the bag, or is this something genuine that they want to do and then see the importance as as an ambassador to honestly impact? What do you think that balance is?
Yeah, I think it crosses the board. Some brands could care less about sustainability. Some brands have CEOs that give amazing speeches and do absolutely nothing on the inside.
Right.
So that absolutely happens. In the industry, people know who those brands are. And then there are brands that are just deeply, deeply committed to figuring out what sustainability is for their brand. Brands like Nike are like so far advanced in their thinking about sustainability. Brands like Gap have some of the most incredible social compliance programs in the world. Like if you're in a Gap factory, you can eat off the floor. You know, and it's, of course it's a factory they don't own, so it's a contract factory. But so I think it all really depends for the brand. And then you've got these big, huge brands that are just manufacturing cheap crap over and over again, and pushing it out into the market. And I think that those brands ultimately are going to stumble and fall behind, because we're entering a time when resources are becoming far more expensive. Labor is, the cost of labor is drastically increasing overseas. And so we're no longer able to follow this model of chasing cheap product around the world,
Right.
Cheap labor. We've kind of run out of countries a little bit. And so brands are having to think like, okay, how do I become more resource efficient? How do I start thinking about my operations? If I'm stuck with the supply chain that I have, I no longer can have inefficient, inferior operations within that supply chain, because all of that now is money, and this is a game of nickels on the floor.
Right.
And so I think that brands are starting to get serious about it. And I believe that the industrial revolution of the 21st century is going to be changing the model of the linear model of the 20th century into a circular model. We're going to see that with renewable energy, even if we have an administration that doesn't care about it, doesn't matter. It's going to happen regardless without them. And you're going to see other industries that are going to move in that direction. And so I think that anybody who's not thinking about it at a strategic level at this point is going to lift their head up in 10 years and go, oh, oops, we missed it.
You missed
boat.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Kent, with your process, and maybe you speak a little bit more about that process, but are the brands that you're working with, is it a single circle that, or is it the possibility of, okay, they bring something back, or a consumer brings something back, or sends it, or they just send it in bulk back to you, that they would resell it once and then potentially do that again?
Yeah, so the way that we look at the lifetime value of a garment and the lifetime value of the sort of resource invested into a garment is that if a brand sells something once, it goes out into the world and a customer uses it and has it. Sometimes that product will come back to the customer because of returns or warranty or damage, and then or back to the brand, and the brand will have it. Sometimes the customer will hold on to it forever, not donate it, not want to donate it, whatever. We all have closets filled with stuff that we don't really know what to do with. We want to get that product back from the customer, and so there are programs coming out, take-back programs, to get that product back from you, because now we're going to see this product as a actually valuable commodity for the brand. And so in partnering with someone like the Renewal Workshop, we're now able to put it through an entire process that brings that product up back to nearly good as new. And so we're going to send that back out into the world, and that process is going to continue over and over again. And so brands may actually end up getting 2, 3, 4 margins out of one product.
Right.
And that's circular economy. That's thinking about the value invested in your resource. So imagine you're only getting a 40% margin the first time. So then you're going to sell it again, and then you're going to sell it again. Like your system margin for that single
garment's
product,
margin is...
yeah, that garment's lifetime margin is so much better than making that same product 4 times and trying to sell it to 4 different consumers.
What would it be if they were to just do it just one time? I mean, they sell it and then resell it.
Yeah, what we see is like we're adding, I don't know the math on it, but we're definitely adding to the margin percent that these brands are getting back. I mean, you think about it, for us, all they're doing is paying a brand, if they buy it back from us and sell it through their own sales channels, all they're doing is paying for the renewal fee. If you have to design and make a brand new product,
right,
think about everything you've got to go through to make that product and get it in the customer's hands. They plan their lines for 18 months ahead of time. We're able to turn around product for them and get it into the market in less than a month. And so this is it's a new model. It's thinking about your product differently. And then the really cool part is that when that product actually does reach the end of its life cycle, at some point it's going to be done, and someone's not going to want to buy it anymore. That then is going to go into textile recycling.
Okay.
And so that's another part of what we're working with, is actually then being able to take that garment when it's truly finished and put it through different textile recycling technologies to create new fibers that can then create yarns and fabrics to make new product. And that really is a golden goose for us, is to be
Sure.
able to get to that point where the technology exists that we can make high quality fibers from existing post-consumer apparel. And that actually is an industry right now that is like not there. It's really amazing of all the things we can do. We cannot take a whole bunch of shirts and turn them back into fibers and yarns where we can remake apparel again. It's really nascent. And we blend fibers together, which creates these monstrous hybrids that cannot be pulled apart.
Right.
And so it's going to be really fascinating in the next couple of years. There's some really interesting technologies coming on board that's going to allow us to actually do that. And when we can do that, it's pretty incredible because Puma recently did this massive study on the impact of garment manufacturing, and they found that over the lifetime of a garment, 60% of its environmental impact is in the production of the raw materials to make that garment.
Okay.
And so if we can stop extracting raw materials, oil and cotton, from the earth, and instead use again the ones we've already extracted, then that's a 60% reduction in our environmental impact as an industry.
That's just, yeah, it's an amazing, and that Mike was talking about that this morning. I know you two were talking about how you might work together as well. So most of the audience, a good share of our audience is our students, high school and college. So as they start their careers and so forth, what advice would you have for those who do have the desire to, I think, one, to maybe get involved in a startup, but also those who are going to go on to the big brands? What message would you want to leave and advice would you leave for them? Yeah,
I think that if you go work at a big brand or retailer, I think that the time period that you've grown up in means that you know what the word sustainability means. You know what climate change is. You know, like 15 years ago, when I applied to business school, well, actually, no, wait, that wasn't even 15 years ago. 2006. So I went to business school in 2006. I was a weirdo who was talking about apparel and sustainability.
Right.
There was some people who were like, I don't even know what that is. I had classmates who were like, sustainability, heard of it, And so it's kind of absurd to think that it's come that, like, everybody knows what that is. And so you guys have this access, this interest in, like, an understanding that we can't just do business as usual. So my recommendation to graduating students is go get great jobs in big companies, small companies, and then be a voice, whatever department you're in, for sustainability, whether you're in marketing or operations or buying. When you make those buying decisions, if you're a buyer, buy based on values, buy based on what the brands stand for. You have the power inside those companies to do that. If you're working in operations or supply chain inside of a big company, you can make sourcing decisions that have massive effects on the supply chain and on the impact that you're making. And I think that understanding and learning at that level inside of an organization is going to get you the expertise to figure out how to then go and actually innovate later on the system. We all want to be in startups right out of school. It's not for everybody. It's really friggin' hard. But I think that it's a really important thing to also go and learn inside of these big organizations, because you have to be an expert at something before you can go and change the system and innovate it.
Right. All right. Well, before we take some Q&A, and if you have any questions, go ahead and start lining up if you wish to ask some questions of Jeff. But I wanted to ask you our 5 end of interview questions. So first one, what is your favorite type of food?
I was thinking about this, and actually, if I had any time at all, I'd really like to take a butcher class. A butcher class? Yeah. I know it might not be popular among some people, but I really like bacon wrapped meat. And so I'm just really interested in like meat and barbecuing, and I'm also the good meat.
Good, the good meat.
The good meat.
The
Yeah.
good meat.
So I'm just kind of interested in that whole world.
All right, fair enough. All right, what made you laugh the hardest most recently?
This was actually a tough question for me to think about, but our team at the Renewal Workshop is what actually brings me a ton of joy and makes me laugh. And I've recently realized that in the face of challenging times, how much comedy and laughing is important right now. So our factory is in a place called Cascade Locks, Oregon, and over Labor Day weekend, a forest fire broke out, and basically surrounded the entire town of Cascade Locks, and the whole thing was evacuated.
Wow, okay.
It's actually the highest priority fire in the country right now. It swamped Portland with smoke
Right,
and ash, and it is now 40 some odd thousand acres of the Columbia River Gorge is destroyed, set off by fireworks.
Oh, wow.
So in the dark of night, we had to drive into an evacuation zone and remove our finished goods inventory that was in the factory because that was the most valuable thing. So loading it into a U-Haul to create a mobile fulfillment center, and we were laughing.
Right.
You have to just, the team together pulling through this, can't believe that I'm doing this, making fire jokes and stuff, and so that is just the resiliency and just you always kind of sort of say that time plus tragedy equals comedy.
Right.
and it was I'm just so proud of our team being able to just be able to laugh and support each other through these kind of challenging times.
Yeah, absolutely. What book would you most recommend?
My number one book is Shantaram.
Shantaram.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if anyone's read the book Shantaram. It's a doorstop of a book, and it is. And I've spent a ton of time in India for sourcing and factories and all that kind of stuff. And it is about an escaped convict from New Zealand who makes his way to India and folds himself into the fabric of the underground mob scene in India. It's got everything you could ever imagine, and it is the most real and vivid, beautifully written, true to the reality of life in Mumbai that I've ever seen. You can just smell off the page what it's truly like, and it is a bucket list book that I highly recommend everybody read.
Great. What is the one thing you've never done that you would love to do?
So I'm turning 40 in 6 weeks, 7 weeks or something like that. And so for my 40th birthday, said, okay, I want to go somewhere I've never been. I want to do something that I've never done.
Okay, all right.
And so I am going to New Zealand, and I am going to run the Auckland Marathon.
Oh, excellent. Congratulations. Well,
wait for the congratulations.
Wait.
I haven't actually run it yet, so we'll see.
I'm sure you'll do wonderfully.
I'm in training.
Okay,
so,
good.
Yeah.
Good. I ran a marathon, and I survived it, but it took me about 3 weeks to finally be able to move normally.
Yeah. I'm going to a tropical island after that, too.
And then what title of a real movie best describes your life?
So I could not think of this, and so I emailed some jackass friends and said, what would you think? And then, of course, I got this little list back. They said La La Land, Crazy People, Around the World in 80 Days, As Good as It Gets, Despicable Me,
Ouch.
Working Girl, and Little Miss Sunshine.
Is there a theme through any of that?
I think there might be. You can pick it out for yourself if you want.
Let it be.
So there you go.
Well, thanks, Jeff. So do we have any questions for Jeff that he can answer?
Hey, Jeff. I'm Gabriel
Hi.
Nakovich. Hey, Scott. How you doing?
Hey, Gabe.
I'm a senior in the retail program. So dealing with the supply chain, do you find it easier for a company to be more sustainable if they're vertically integrated or if they're outsourcing from different manufacturers?
Yeah, the vertically integrated companies have a lot more control over their supply chain, right? And so there's definitely the ability to channel down funds and strategy all the way to as far down into the supply chain that they go. And so for sure, there's that level of integration is really helpful, but it's so rare in the apparel industry because the manufacturing of the product and the brands are literally an ocean apart. 97% of product that we sell here in this country is imported. And so when you talk about sort of manufacturing, the real issues are in overseas factories. And I think that if you can't vertically integrate, because it doesn't fit your business model, then long-term partnerships overseas are really like an important thing for brands to focus on. There's been a lot of what they call factory flight, and it's just like basically every factory does the same thing. So if I can get it cheaper down the street, then I'll move next year's production down the street. And that's a really unsustainable way of looking at manufacturing. And so if brands can form longer term partnerships and really develop factories, then it's sort of a way to get at some of that strategy around a vertical integration that's kind of hard to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kim.
Hi. Have you run into any challenges if you have product that you are reselling and it's really maybe trendy or you have a lot of it? How have you kind of come across any challenges and attacked that if you are having trouble reselling a product?
Yeah, so what's interesting is we launched the direct-to-consumer site in February, and so and we've just sort of been renewing product and getting it up there on the site for sale, and we're really in this learning phase right now of like what should we be renewing, and so this is where a lot of the analysis of the product that we're putting up there is going to start to come into play. We're starting to get enough data for it to be significant for us to now be able to inform our production processes, because it doesn't help if we put value and effort and money into renewing product that nobody wants. And so the other two streams of our business are also important, and that is the sort of upcycling side of our business, so taking the fabric itself and being able to turn that into something else entirely, or that recycling side that I talked about. And so a lot of times with like fast fashion, the product doesn't have the quality or the price point that will allow for renewal. So that product actually just gets straight funneled into recycling. And as I mentioned, it's a really nascent young industry, but that really is an opportunity in the future to be huge. When you think about the amount of fast fashion and cheap products we make, that's where most of that stuff's gonna end up going.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt. I am actually an alumni of the program. I now work for Tailored Brands, so I got a quick question for you. When it comes to sustainability, why are retailers merging to create sustainability? Do they lose their individuality when they eventually merge together? A perfect example is Men's Warehouse buyout of Joseph A. Bank, and they have different target markets under one umbrella now.
I think that it's a really big challenge for retailers, whether they're in apparel or any sort of consumer product category, when they merge together. The majority of mergers fail because cultures in the two companies do not align, not because it wasn't a good business decision on paper. Mergers are difficult. I think it'll be fascinating to see what happens with Amazon and Whole Foods. Mm-hmm. I could not imagine two more different companies. I've dealt with Whole Foods almost my entire career. They are incredibly relationship based. I used to fly around the country to all of their regions, meeting with their regional buyers. That's how we sold product. That's how we got it in. That's how they wanted to buy it. And now you have Amazon, which is very faceless and about just data and numbers and ordering. So I think that it's a challenge, and we'll see what happens with a brand like Whole Foods, which is all about sustainability and responsibility. There's two ways that could go. You could have somebody like, I'm just using them as an example, but you could sort of apply this to different mergers that you're talking about. You could have a company like Amazon actually be able to scale their impact and scale their ability to promote sustainability, or you could have one that decides that that's too expensive and start to water that down and decrease it. And I think we're sort of watching which way that's going to go for brands like Whole Foods. But I think, yeah, I think it's a really big challenge in mergers.
Well, very helpful insight. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aubrey, and I'm a freshman in high school. I have a quick question. I was wondering if you upcycle the clothing returns into other products.
Yeah, we do that sometimes, and I think that's an amazing way for products to get a second life. And so what we do, as just mentioning, if a product can't be renewed, the first stop is our upcycling stream. We don't do a lot of the actual upcycling ourselves, the creation of new products, but we actually have the material. And so this kind of piles up for us and then becomes this sort of raw material that a lot of upcycle designers, and there's a huge community of upcycle designers that kind of go rummaging and finding this stuff and trying to get dead stock and everything. We can provide that and offer that to these designers, and then they can turn it into something totally different. And we've done that. We've made tote bags and wallets and stuff like that before. But it's a better thing than recycling, right? We go renewal and then upcycling and then recycling. And which reminds me, recycling really, we kind of misuse that word. It means to take something and turn it back into the same thing again. So we take a glass bottle and recycle it into a glass bottle.
Right.
A lot of folks sort of use the word recycling to mean just use again.
Okay.
So like selling used clothes is not actually recycling them, right? That's just reusing.
Right.
So it's just the sort of nomenclature, but yeah, upcycling is a really great way, and I think that there's a lot of really cool businesses out there that should be looking more at the opportunities around that.
Thank you.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. Well, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Interesting kind of story, and I wish you all the best. And let's give Jeff a big welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.